All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Rocky Top Insider postgame show. This is Ryan Shumpert. I'm Rick Butler. Tennessee defeats George Mason by a score of 87-66 right here in the return to Knoxville.
Yeah,
it's been a minute since
been.
I think Tennessee basketball has been right here in Thompson-Boling Arena at the Food City Center. Ryan, I think two big stories right off the top of my head. Number one is Jonas Aidoo, and number two is Tobe Awaka. Both of them hit career highs in scoring tonight. Jonas Aidoo had 17 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and a block. Tobe Awaka had 11 points of his own. Just start whichever one you want. But to me, those are the two big stories.
I'd agree. And Jonas Aidoo just continues really what's been a theme all season, but he particularly played well last week in North Carolina. Rick Barnes was really complimentary of him, and you could see there's an emphasis to throw the ball down low to him, which there hasn't necessarily always been. And I think that shows the confidence they have in him that's growing. And I think you've seen, I guess the thing that sticks out to me the most about Jonas Aidoo, he hit 2 threes tonight. He's not going to do that every game. We know he can hit shots.
Yeah.
But this season, he just looks so comfortable on the offensive end and is confident and self-assured of what he's doing.
Yeah.
And in the last 2 years, he hasn't been that way on the offensive end. And I think you saw that in a lot of ways tonight, that they throw it down to him, and he's not always looking to score. He's just playing really smooth and really well. And that's, again, just far in the season, a game against George Mason, you don't want to make the declaration, but it is really feeling like Jonas Aidoo has truly made a big jump here in his third season.
Yeah, and I think what we've kind of heard and what they're telling him in the building is, hey, you've played against a lot of the best big men in the country, Hunter Dickinson, Baycott from last week against North Carolina. Tennessee is telling him, hey, you're on that level too. We just want to bring it out of you. And I think that's where you get a lot of that confidence from. What about Tobe Awaka? He did not play in last week's game versus North Carolina. Suffered a little bit of an injury in Maui. Was able to kind of finish that tournament off. Yeah. Tennessee held him back from North Carolina just to kind of be cautious. But he made a big return to the court as well.
It was Tobe Awaka doing what Tobe Awaka does, which is be really good on the offensive glass, really be good on the glass on both sides, and then have that good touch, turning to his left shoulder and finishing with his right hand. He did that a lot tonight. You got the numbers there. I think maybe what stood out, it was something like 12.7 rebounds. Am I right?
11.7 rebounds.
Close. He didn't do it in that many minutes. I doubt he even played 15 minutes.
10
minutes. So those are some incredibly efficient numbers and not a ton of minutes. So he did what he does well. And again, Tennessee needs to get more and more out of him, find more consistency, and it'll be harder for him, especially with that kind of low post scoring game when he plays bigger big men. He's a little bit undersized for a 5, which he's almost exclusively playing this year. Though we did see a little bit of a lineup, both those guys on the court tonight. But it was Awaka kind of doing what we know Awaka can do well, and it was good to see him back out there. And for Tennessee, it's about getting that on a game-to-game consistent basis.
You mentioned a second ago, but I think one of the other things that was brought up during the press conference that I certainly noticed as well was just Tennessee's guards did a great job of feeding those two big men. I think they kind of realized that that's where the hot hand was. That's sort of where they had an advantage in the game. Despite George Mason being a good team against teams in the paint, that's still where Tennessee was finding their advantage in the night. I thought Tennessee's guards did a really nice job of distributing the ball, getting it down low, and getting it into a scoring position.
No, they definitely did. And just I think moving the ball, distributing the ball was something Tennessee as a whole did really good tonight. Entering this game, I think they averaged 13 and change assists per game. And that was kind of one of the strangest developments with this offense. In the past, this has been a very heavy assist team, not a lot of guys scoring in ISO. It's kind of been flipped early in the season. I think they want to find a middle ground. Tonight they doubled that number, 27 assists, season high for the team. I think previously they'd only had one performance with 20-plus assists, and that was in the season opener against Tennessee Tech. All 3 games in Maui, they had more turnovers than assists. So I think that's a good development. Again, something you need to see more of to be fully bought in or whatever you want to say to that effect. But they did a good job of that tonight. I think a lot of credit goes to Zakai Ziegler, who is continuing to get better and better out there.
Zakai Ziegler had 6 assists on the night. You know who else who had 6 assists on the night? That would be Josiah Jordan-James.
Yeah.
He played a pretty darn good game. Listen to this box score line. 15 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals. It's a pretty balanced night for a guy that Rick Barnes called a connector for the offense.
Yeah, it was a very good phrase or good word, I think, to describe this game. And he's sneakily just playing it an extremely high level early in the season. We've talked about how Dalton Knecht and the offense he brings is able to free up some other guys. I think Josiah Jordan-James is the most obvious candidate there. He's doing a really good job of getting to his spots 5 to 15 feet from the basket, hitting shots. And I think maybe the most surprising development is he seems like a different guy finishing at the basket than he's been in his first 4 years. So he continues to play really, really well. And, man, he played great in that final, 6-week stretch to end the 2022 season. I don't know if he's quite playing that level, but it feels like what he's doing right now in that stretch of play he had 2 years ago is the best he's played in his Tennessee career. And this feels more sustainable because when he was doing that, he was shooting 40% from three in that stretch. Now he's scoring in a lot of different ways. He's getting teammates involved. He's being a connector, as Rick Barnes said.
I got one last question for you, but I'm going to kind of turn it over to you in the middle of it because this was your idea in the press conference. Tennessee had 27 assists tonight. Tell me why that's important.
Well, I think it's important because this is a team that, besides Dalton Connect, I don't think anyone really scores best in isolation situations. They have a lot of good shooters on the perimeter, maybe not a lot of elite shooters. And I think maybe it goes back to the point earlier that you talked about. Tennessee's big men they're better scorers inside than they've been maybe the last couple of years, more consistent around the basket. But even still, especially Jonas Adu is probably their best one, isn't a great back to the basket with a bunch of moves. Get them the ball in positions where they can catch, finish around the rim. They've been better finishing through contact, but not necessarily where they have to create their own shot around the rim. So it's important for a lot of different reasons. And certainly I think that was the best we've seen Tennessee do it so far this season.
And that was more than their average, right?
More than double their average.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Pretty good night right there. Any other kind of final takeaways here from Tennessee's 21-point win over George Mason?
No final takeaways from this game, but back up in New York City tonight, Illinois knocks off FAU in a big-time game. Fighting Illini ranked 20th this week in AP poll. They come to Thompson Bowling Arena on Saturday noon, tip-off. First big game of the year at TBA. Game Tennessee is going to be itching to win after losing 3 straight games to top 20 opponents. Coming into this one, should be a really fun game and hopefully a really fun atmosphere as well.
Absolutely. Rick Barnes said during his press conference after the George Mason game, hey, Illinois is like a conference game in December. You don't get too many of those, and you got to take advantage when you do. So that'll be Saturday. Both Ryan and I will be right here in the building for that game. So, of course, we'll bring you all the coverage from Saturday's game against Illinois. But first, hey, we got to go back and finish our coverage from today's game against George Mason. So that's going to wrap it up for us from Tennessee's 87-66 win over George Mason. This is Ryan Shumpert. I'm Rick Butler. You've been listening to the Rocky Top Insider postgame show. We'll see you back here on Saturday for the next one.